Nice way to go. Keep it going. Good job, guys. All right, Paul. I see you. All right, Charlie. Finish on. Coach Carl.
Great job, guys.
Hey there, it's Coach Carl here, and welcome to episode 208 of the Today's Leader podcast. Now, over recent weeks, we've had some amazing international leaders on our show. And this week's guest is no less amazing, he's just a bit closer to home. 2 streets and a lifetime of mentoring away. Now, Stuart Browse is the National Quality Manager for Lifestyle Campers here in Australia. Lifestyle Campers have a great reputation as one of Australia's leading off-road camper trailer and off-road caravan manufacturers here. They've cultivated this over 2 decades of innovation, design and manufacture. They are renowned around Australia as one of the best campers on the market. They have an amazingly loyal customer base and community based around the quality of their products. Now, it's been quite a journey for Stuart, but I think finally he's found his dream role, combining a passion of his for that camping lifestyle. Stuart likes nothing more than sitting around a campfire, sharing the yarns. But he's mixing that with a close leadership and ownership team with Lifestyle Campers. Now, Stuart's been a mentor of mine since the early 90s. And our contact today remains strong. His leadership credentials have come from a retail background in predominantly big box retail before moving into specialty outdoor. Stuart then tested himself by moving into a new field in and around an engineering company before joining the lifestyle team. Stuart's approach has always been to lead by example, and his guidance and mentoring for hundreds of leaders are something that still impacts them today. Now, we did have some sound quality issues from my end with this particular podcast, so my sound capture does have some problems. And while this creates a bit of a strange hollowness at times, it doesn't impact the conversation. And it certainly doesn't impact the insights that Stewie shares. After a quick word from our sponsor, I bring you Stuart Browse.
The Coach Curl podcast is brought to you by Think Grow Business, the home of the Think Grow Business Mastermind. If you're serious about growing your business, get serious and join a mastermind group today. Find out more at thinkandgrowbusiness.com.au.
So it's my pleasure today to have on the Today's Leader podcast. He's a mentor of mine. He's the National Quality Manager for Lifestyle Campers here in Australia. Welcome to the podcast, Stuart Browse.
Hi, Tony. How are you?
Stewie, you're a mentor of mine. We know each other well. So for those people that are listening, we're probably going to have some in-jokes along the way, and we'll have a bit of a laugh and a reminisce. But tell the people the Stuart Browse story.
Okay, the Stuart Browse story. I suppose for me, being in, customer service for 40 years, probably 30 of those or 30 odd of those would have been in big box retail.
Yeah.
And the last couple of roles have probably gone into that private sector, the mum and dad business, and probably more down a passion rather than the corporate side of things.
And it's good that you mention that, because it's almost like you found your ideal role at the moment with Lifestyle Campers.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously camped for a long, long time, and when this came around, I was mad not to jump on board and take it. So.
Absolutely. And when we talk big box, we're talking the likes of Masters, Bunnings, Kmart along the journey. And then a dabble there for a moment with Mountain Design. So, correct. And then obviously now with Lifestyle. And previous to that, you were doing Cool Fog as well.
That's right.
So,
yeah, definitely. Yes.
So you really had this really broad-based, big team, large team experience, and now you're working with more specific teams. And so what's the difference that you felt in regards to the leadership needed for a large team as opposed to a smaller team?
Okay, I suppose reality, the leadership's probably similar. The bigger business, the bigger the leadership team, so the more people you're dealing with, the more support you have.
Support you have.
The smaller the businesses, you're probably a bit more involved.
Yeah.
but direction and decisions are made much quicker.
Yeah.
And the businesses are very nimble, so they can, whether it be leadership, whether it be project, whatever's going on, it can change much quicker.
So customer service retail is predominantly your background. What was the compelling reason why you went into that?
That's a funny story. The compelling reason was my mum worked for Kmart back in 1978.
Yeah.
And I left school wanting to be a teacher, but didn't apply myself early. And just happened at the time they were looking for trainee managers. Okay. So my mum put my name forward, and I went for an interview and got a job with Kmart as a 26-week wonder, as they used to call them back in those days.
Oh, and just for the listeners, I was a 7-week wonder.
So I joined the Kmart at Sunnybank in 1979.
Wow. So you sort of fell into it.
Oh, very much so.
But you've always, it's funny that you said you wanted to be a teacher, because in my eyes you've always been a teacher. So, because one of the skill sets that you've always had, Stuart, is being that mentoring and the development role. And that's something that you've obviously gained great pleasure out of doing in the course.
Very much so. I mean, even today now, in the roles I'm in now, I've gone to a business with very experienced people, but I'm still there trying to mentor them, trying to make them better, trying to support them and get the best I can out of those guys. And
I think it's a real credit to people like Stuart out there that really do have a focus on developing the leaders that they work with, because the contacts and the that you maintain throughout your history. So I still get amazed at the amount of people that you've just will mention. Oh, I spoke to such and such from 1990, and I'm thinking, my God, but it's good that those people have maintained that contact and always reach out. So
yeah, certainly, it's very, very nice, very, very nice.
So in regards to, say, leadership, and let's face it, we're on the Today's Leader podcast, and it's all about leadership for today. So who's inspired you in your journey, in your leadership journey? I've
been inspired by a lot of people. Some in more senior roles than myself, some in more junior roles than myself. People that inspired me are people that probably can make decisions on the hop, and where I'm probably a bit of a thinker, so I really appreciate those guys that, can make those urgent calls. But that's probably the thing that stands out most for me. And they're all different ages and different positions. So
in your journey yourself, so you started with Kmart as a senior trainee or a 21-week wonder. And the reason why it was a 7-week wonder, we were the junior trainees, so we had to... we were less considered. So. But so in those days, a lot of how you got forward was how long you were in the shop and the length of hours that you were designed to. And I know that as a trainee manager myself, if my car wasn't the first one in the car park every morning, I knew that I was going to be behind the eight ball. So, and being in that journey that you've had, that you've shared, so that changed, thankfully.
Oh, very, very much so, yeah. And as you say, back when I started as well, you if you had to be the first there, the last to leave, you had a set program over those 26 weeks, and the guys that were tapped on the shoulder, I suppose, are the ones that not only completed the program and did what they meant to do, but it's those that probably, ancillary things that were seen rather than the actual role that you're doing, because, it's all new to all of us.
Yes, sometimes I think back to those days and I just think that, those organisations were incredibly successful, but I think they just had it all wrong because it was all about effort and time in store as opposed to influence and making stuff happen.
Definitely was, yeah.
So who, when we talk about leaders that inspire, a lot of people, talk about the Simon Sinek's of the world or the Stephen Coveys or the John Maxwell. Is there any one of those, thought leaders that have particularly influenced you in your journey? Yeah,
definitely Simon Sinek. And he came up when I was with, I think, by the end of the Bunnings.
Yeah.
And one of the projects we had to do, we went and did a personal branding session for 4 days.
Wow.
And I got a lot out of that. But one of the things we had to do was to view a certain video of his.
Yeah.
And then we all had to talk about that when we went there. And once I sort of saw what he was talking about, it probably resonated with me quite well as far as that circle of influence and the why.
Yeah.
And to this day, I still say, the why, so
people buy why you do it, not what you do.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And I use that even today now, as in the quality role that I'm in, I keep thinking to myself, why are they buying this?
Yeah.
So it's more about the product and, and what they're doing.
And when so in the quality role, it's about building campers to design and so that you don't get them back. So
Correct.
You don't want to be fixing defects, and because that's where the true costs are going to come in. How do you so when you talk about people in those sort of skilled engineering roles, how do you equate that to them?
Okay, I suppose the thing that I equate it back to them is I say to them that I'm looking at it through the customer's eyes, and if you're willing to pay $60,000, $70,000, up to $120,000 for an off-road vehicle, then you really want the thing to do what it's meant to do and to look as sharp as it needs to be. So, it's about pointing out to them that, hey, this is, would you accept that? This is what the customers are dealing with, and you want to be that point of difference. You want to be better than the opposition.
Yeah.
And reality is there's a lot of campers on the market at the moment.
Oh, there's heaps.
We are, an Australian-owned business with an Australian-built product.
Yeah.
And therefore, there's just that want and that need to make sure that we're right.
Because I suppose the industry went down the Chinese-made route quite openly, and many of the competitors that you compete with have the Chinese product. And I guess coming out of COVID, we may see a different industry start to emerge.
So certainly, we've certainly had to rethink what we do.
Yeah.
And now more focus on the Australian product.
Yeah.
Because, as you say, the COVID thing not only made people rethink, but there was the inability to get product. So that slowed everyone down as well. So, it's multi-tooth, the issue. So, but we had to look back and say, how do we make ourselves, future-proof?
Yeah.
How do we, be in charge of our own destiny?
Yeah.
Rather than being someone else's.
Because it is only still a family company, isn't it?
Certainly, it's a family-owned business since 2000.
Yeah.
So,
got a fantastic social media presence. They've got a fantastic community of owners. Yeah. So it's something that obviously the business owner, John, should be incredibly proud of. And then having that real strong focus now on the Australian-made product, which was always there. But you also had the entry at the Chinese-made product just to compete.
Exactly. You had to be in that industry. You've got to be in across the whole thing. So, we had to have that partially imported product.
Yeah.
To stay work at a price point.
Yeah.
Where the majority of customers are, but then obviously we were able to extend to the topper end where people are now happy to pay that because one, it's Australian, and two, is it does what it says it does.
They say, I read an article the other day about people towing caravans for the first time, Stuart, and heavy camper trailers, because, yours are quite well built. They're sturdy, they're heavy. You need to have a certain skill set to be able to drive them. And what apparently we're seeing in Australia is greater stats at the moment of caravans jackknifing and doing all sorts of things because they're first-time drivers.
Correct. Yeah, so first-time drivers don't understand to what towing is, but mainly don't understand how to load the vehicle. So they've got too much weight potentially in the back end. Yeah. And therefore, once the moment they deviate slightly in the road, then it starts this fishtail and sway, and they just lose it.
Yeah, and they were giving some tips in this paper article that I read. So I don't know if you're going to pull that out if you're going down the highway doing 100 and the trailer starts to fishtail. But so when we're talking leadership and we're talking about, say, COVID crisis, what were some of the leadership traits that you saw during the crisis now, and not necessarily maybe it can be from the world stage, it can be from the local stage, it can be, talk me through how people can lead through a crisis.
I think from what I saw, the leading was really looking at your business and how to future-proof it, and how to get through however long that COVID started. So, no one knew whether it was going to be a week, 6 months, 12 months. Initially, for everyone, I think the leadership was to get people together and say, "Hey guys, we're going to get through this." Yes, there may be some losses, but at the end of the day, we still got a strong product, and a lot of people are saying that we still got the right product.
Yeah.
How do we reinvent our business so that we are, not only survive the COVID, but come out the other side a better business, and able to grow when the ability happens.
Yeah. So one of the things that I was incredibly critical of with the COVID crisis was the fact that many of our politicians here in Australia were talking about hibernation. Put your business to sleep and then we'll wake you up when you're ready. And I just think that was the wrong message, because as you were saying, it's about how do I use this opportunity? Yeah, no one wanted COVID to happen. No one wanted the impacts that we've had on an economic basis or on a business basis. But it was an opportunity also to future-proof, bulletproof your business. And I think it's a shame that not many people as what they'd probably like to have now, took that opportunity. So maybe too many people did go to sleep and hibernate.
Well, I think so. People sort of, that's exactly what they said, but I think those that have survived, there's a lot of businesses coming out that's a lot stronger than what they were at the end of sort of February, March. Yeah. Because they've really looked at their business and they've measured twice, cut once, and come out the other side a better business for it. And
it seemed to shorten down the change cycle. So, I mean, and being ex-retail and ex-big box, it's been interesting to see what the Bunnings managers had to be doing, for example, to cope with, the new sanitation and social distancing and whatnot. So it's always interesting to see how change can happen so quickly when it's forced upon us.
Definitely. And it's good to see how people can be nimble, whether it be a big business or small business. Yeah. People reacted extremely quickly. Yeah. And those that didn't react paid the benefit, paid the price, whether it be good, bad or indifferent.
And whether it's now or whether it's in, people keep talking about the September cliff.
Correct.
So whether it's now or whether it's in September, October, I think that, the worst is certainly, hopefully over from a health perspective, but we've still got a lot of pain to go in the economy. Yeah. Stuart, you've also been a leader through your career that's come across some obstacles, some obstructions, you've shown a fair bit of resilience during some tough and trying times. I don't want you necessarily to go into that, but we all face the inevitable troughs along the way. Yep. You've had, I'll use some really technical terms, you've had some shit-house leaders that have really challenged who you are and your values. Yep. So when people are facing, say, the inevitable troughs that we have in business, what would be some of that advice that maybe you used that helped you get through some of that?
Yeah, I mean, as you say, I've certainly been through a couple. But in saying that, I think for me, you look at the situation and you dig deep to when you had a success. Yeah. In anything, whether it be bad situation, whether it be bad customers, whatever it might be, the minority are minimal. Yeah. But you hang on that. So the thing is, you've got to say, hold on, 90% or 95% of what I've done is positive. Yeah. How did I do this previously? You dig into those, into the bank, and you pull out from the bank and say, hey, I used to do it this way. I'm going to do it again. It was successful for me before. Don't get hung up on what's not right. Yeah. Just, grit your teeth, go back to what works. Yeah. And 9 times out of 10, you come out the other side a better person for it, and that, you move on to bigger and better things, or you move on to bigger and better projects, or the business goes forward.
It's so true. We hang on the bad stuff that happens, and that becomes like an all-consuming energy drain on each and every one of us, and then it's a choice that we make to switch. Yeah. So we can allow ourselves to sit in a corner and get into the fetal position, but we can also make a choice to say, hey, I've done this before, I've won before, I've come from worse situations, so and to really work through that. And
normally your library of stuff is when you've been through in probably senior leadership roles, we all keep a library of stuff, whether it be on a head, whether it be paper bound, whatever. Yeah. And you just go back and grab that out and say, let's have a look at this is how I did it. Wow, I remember that. All of a sudden the smile comes back on your face, the fire gets back in your belly, and off you go and say, I'm going to conquer this.
I know when I was with Bunnings, Stuart, same time as yourself, it was every now and again, I mean, we all go through these bad periods. And, whenever I was feeling a bit annoyed, a bit pissed off with the business, I'd always try and book myself into either go talk to some new team members or do an induction myself. Because what you normally find, well, what I found happened, is that all of a sudden I'd be talking about the positives around what my work is and what the business is and how they look after us and all of that. And all of a sudden, by talking about it, it just shifted your mindset. But it was a conscious thing that I did. It's like when you've got visitors come to stay at your place, and they might be from Adelaide or Melbourne or Perth or wherever. So you spend a good couple of days showing them around, where you live, getting that pride back into the city. It's the very same thing, because then maybe the week before you're saying, geez, I'm a bit bored with living where I am. So sometimes it's that conscious thing to go out and look for the positive or talk through the positive that's going to make that change.
Definitely.
So tell me about your relationship with failure.
I've had probably a bit of failure on the way, self-inflicted and probably dealt to me. But I think failure is just the chance, I think, to regroup. Have those 1 or 2 days, weeks, hours, whatever it is, down the dumps. Bash yourself up, get up, work it out, and then come out the side and say, okay, well, that's behind me now. I can't change the past. So take the learnings that you need to take from that, and then look forward and say, okay, well, let's go forward. I mean, every single one of us fails in life at something, big, small, or whatever, and it's how you react to that and how you come out of that that's more important. The failure is about learning. Yeah. And it's how you react to that's important.
A lot of people say that if we haven't learned from it, we that's where the failure is.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of people talk about embracing failure. I don't think there's a person in this world that runs out on a path thinking or believing that they're going to embrace failure when it hits. But to me, it's about that productive relationship. What am I going to do if I fail? How do I react? How do I move forward? And, and as we talked about before, Stuart, you've come up against, some failure that was inflicted upon you in some respects, and some obstacles and some roadblocks and some pretty hard heads. Yeah. And, how you managed to learn from that and understand, well, what was my role in that and how can I take that away?
Yeah, definitely. You've got to. If you don't do that self-reflection at the end of any of those things, then you're going to repeat the same thing no matter where you go. Yeah. So you've got to you've got to reflect, take what's good out of that, what's bad, push aside. Yeah. Take what's good, and then go and a new set of eyes, a whole new life. Feeling for life, and start again.
It's interesting you talked about when we were talking about failure, taking the time to take it in and think about it. And John Maxwell talks about he's got a 24-hour rule. So whenever he fails, he gives himself 24 hours to go out and kick stones. And it's interesting because then John says 24 hours and then he's back into it. But he also treats success that way. So when he wins, instead of celebrating and dining out on that win for, weeks, months, even years for some people, 24 hours, celebrate, and then back into it. So it's a really good philosophy.
Yeah, it is. Good action.
So you talked about Simon Sinek. What are you reading at the moment? What's rocking your boat?
Well, I'm not. I mean, I'm got the Simon Sinek stuff coming through the and social media and having a look at that. But I'm currently reading, believe it or not, Burke and Wills.
Okay.
So after going hibernating, the end of last year, we took 5 weeks out and went out in the middle of Australia and did the Burke and Wills track and went and had a look at the dig tree and all like that. Extremely fascinated. So I've now trying to read this book that's I think 2,100 pages long. So it's a massive book. Yeah. But after seeing it, you want to go back and then read what it's all about.
Understand it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Some big things happen, some amazing things happened out there, and some sad things, but some really good stuff happened. So
it's the history of Australia.
Correct, very much so.
It's how the country was expanded in so many ways, and it's also really positive because when you came back, you were talking a lot about the cultural experiences that you had with the traditional owners, and it's good that as Australians we highlight that alongside those early people like Burke and Wills. So I think there's some real positives there. So,
and I suppose looking at that, there was probably a really strong, there's some strong leadership stuff that was in that for what they did. Yeah. And again, some massive failures. You don't fail much more than losing your life, but there's some real big wins, and a lot of the country was built on what they did.
Can you imagine, like having that as like you win, you go and find some new place, you lose, well, you're dead. Could you imagine that being part of that decision-making process?
It's quite fine, isn't it? It's...
Yeah, I remember talking with a lady in my network at one stage, and I said, we're talking about failure, and she said, Tony, you've got to be prepared to fall flat down on your face as hard as you possibly can if you want to succeed. And to me, it made some sense, because one of the things I've learned to understand, and no doubt you have as well, is that you've got to have the troughs to really appreciate the peaks.
Very much so.
So you've got to understand what pain is, or that frustration at not making stuff happen, to actually celebrate the wins.
So I think if you're the sort of person that, extremely successful and have wins, that tends to be the norm. The moment you get the fail for whatever you want to call it, big, small, or indifferent, it can take the wind out of it, because you're used to being a high flyer or having that success. So sometimes that really knocks them around.
Got the scatter blame happening. So,
and that's probably a good thing too. Some of that feeling you get when you do fail, you do go for the blame. Sometimes
it's always someone else's fault.
Exactly. It's not me. It's not me.
It's never my fault.
Exactly right. But until you then, sit back and then reflect and say, yep, I think I had a part in that. Yeah.
And that's what you've got to look for. You've got to look for your role in it, because, fair enough, someone may have done something that created the ultimate blow-up, but somewhere along the line, you've put some fingers in there. What's the old thing? Don't poke the bear. And, somewhere along the line, you've stoked that fire, and the fire is what's erupted, and it's about looking for, once again, you look for that lesson, don't you?
You certainly do. You've got to.
So when you look back on, great leaders in the past, and, Burke and Wills, and great leaders of today, what's the fundamental differences that you're seeing in characteristics and traits?
From past to present? Or
Yeah.
I don't know whether there is a lot, to be honest. I think at the end of the day, it's still about inspiring people. It's still about being charismatic. It's still about getting people to follow you. And so, I don't think there's a great deal of change between them. Things have changed. Technology's made the big difference. But at the end of the day, someone's still going to be making the shots. Computers aren't going to make the calls.
Yeah.
Someone's still going to have the face. Not yet. But someone's got to have the face. Someone's got to be the people everyone looks up to, that makes the final call or sets the due north, or sets the direction, or whatever it might be.
Yeah. But the leadership traits of being able to influence and bring followers along is certainly there.
Very much. And I think also, with as far as the difference, I suppose, back in those days, if you take away from the bigger leaders and look at business, for instance, a lot of people were managers back then. It was about you must do, you will do.
Yeah.
Now it's about leading. So now it's more about using the people that surround yourself by good people.
Yeah. Using them
to work alongside you. So that manager to leader, and that's I suppose where I've seen in the 45, 48 years I've been working is very much that's where it's changed.
Yeah.
From me to us.
Yeah.
From I want you to do this to now let's guys can do so. What are your thoughts before?
Yeah.
And I suppose the manager, for want of a better word, has always had to have all the answers.
Yeah.
This day and age now, the leaders don't need the answers, because they surround themselves by people that that fit in. It's a round peg in a round hole, and if you recruit and you work well along those lines, then you have everyone heading in their own same direction, and you're using the right people, and you're there just a person manager.
Yeah.
And a figurehead for a business, rather than the person that's got to make every single decision, because you can't do that these days.
Yeah, I still remember the great old wise Ron Olson say at one of his team talks, he says, I don't have all the answers, but between us we will.
Correct.
And, that was back in 1998, Stuart. So some of those things are absolutely relevant. For a leader, it's all about the people.
Yeah.
For a manager, it's all about the checklist.
Yeah, correct.
And the process. And, there's a fundamental difference. So if you really want to be a leader for today, it's all about really understanding the people. So I'm going to go back to the book. So what book has had the biggest influence on you?
I suppose that I'm not a big reader, but one that I can recall very much is Wayne Bennett.
Okay.
So it's probably one I just couldn't put down. In fact, I read it in the space of about 2 days or 3 days, and And the biggest takeout from that, which I use all the time, and people slap me around there for using it, it's always about if you always do what you always done, then you'll always get what you always got.
Yeah.
And that resonates with me all the time because it's so true. If you're always doing the wrong thing, then you're always going to get the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And if you're always going to get a mediocre outcome, then you'll always get a mediocre outcome.
Yeah.
If you want, if you relate back to me into quality, if you want better quality, then you've got to change some things.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can't just keep it the same thing because it's the same product. So you've got to change it.
I was reading a book from Michael Heppel, and at the moment it's called Edge, and it's all about peak performance. And he actually shares something similar. He talks about the habits being the foundation for success, right? And he said habits are the things that no one notices, or your daily habits are the things that no one notices. And, that sounds a bit Captain Obvious, right? Yeah. So, but it's so true. And whether you're a success or whether you're unsuccessful or not fulfilling your potential, it's all about your habits that you do every day that just tend to go unnoticed. Yeah. So for the successful person, it's about getting up early. It's about hitting the road. It's about, eating well, staying healthy, all those things. That's daily habits. To them, it goes unnoticed to the successful person because it's part of what they do. Yep. But for the unsuccessful person, getting up late, hitting the couch, watching Netflix, once again, it's what they do. It goes unnoticed. Yep. But it's about understanding what are the habits that we need to have that are going to create a success, and what are the habits that I need to get rid of that are not creating success for me.
Very much. I mean, I have a saying that I've used for a long time as act as if.
Yeah.
So I think, that's can fit into a lot of things, you acting as if. So, I always used it very much as for that next role.
Yeah.
When I was looking at something, okay, if I was a store manager and I wanted to be a regional manager or an area manager, how would they see things? How would they look at this?
Yeah.
And you try to take that next cap and say, okay, I'm going to act as if.
Yeah, I've heard that a couple of times.
And that allows you to move up, So it's probably something that I have.
Yeah.
It has been part of my vocabulary and part of, my leadership. That's what I've used.
And it even extends to, because, as I said, I've heard that a number of times when you've been mentoring me, Stewie. So, but it's almost like if you want to be respected, you've got to act as if you are respected and show those behaviours where people will respect you. So, and it's like that right throughout life. And it's one of those things that I mention quite often in coaching sessions that I have with people. You've got to act as if, especially those people that are looking to step up, that are keen to step up, that are ambitious to step up. So while we're on that chain of thought, I mean, everyone's in a hurry, even more so today. Yep. So what advice would you give to someone? So you started as a trainee and you worked all your way up into senior leadership roles with organisations. So what's the advice that you would give to, say, a young leader who's sitting there impatient and wants to be the CEO tomorrow?
Be careful what you wish for. I think you've got to do the hard yard. You've got to build that foundation. You've got to understand what leadership's about. Leadership's about. You've got to understand what leading people is about. And then obviously as you go to that business, start picking up the traits that business wants. But I think overall, you've just got to... You can't be there in 5 minutes. If you're there in 5 minutes, you don't have the real life experience. You don't have, that's the main thing is you don't have the life experience. You're not going to be the CEO at 25, unless you're in a very small business and you own it and whatever. Yeah. But if you want to be the CEO of a Coles or wherever it is, you've got another. You're going to be. The outstanding ones are in there in their late 30s.
Yeah,
you've got time to learn. You've got time to take bits and pieces from people who you see as mentors or you see as strong leaders, and make that part of your Bible, make that part of your book that you live from. Yeah, and use it as the wins.
Put it in your toolkit.
Correct.
You learn from your good, you learn from your bad.
Correct. So. If the tool doesn't work, you throw it out of the toolkit and you put the right one in there.
Yeah, we've had some bad leaders, but we won't talk about them, will we? So for you, Stewie, what's the vision for you going forward?
The vision for me going forward, I suppose, is to... I mean, I absolutely love what I'm in now. It's a passion. I think there's nothing better than... If your job's your passion, then you're going to enjoy it. But the vision for me, I suppose, is to continue to keep working and doing what I'm doing until I don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I've had a fair bit to do with kids, through coaching basketball and refereeing and coaching referees.
Still playing basketball, aren't you?
Yeah, still playing basketball. So, there's still a passion there to I think to spend some time with youth, kids, and so that's when the time comes to say, well, I don't want to work anymore, but I'm not the sort of person that once I give up work, I'm going to sit at home non-stop.
Yeah.
The vision for me is, how do I keep giving? How to develop other people, and
how do you serve? How do you add value?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, very much so. Very much serve. Yeah, add value to other people's lives.
So you've had 40 years, a long and a distinguished career. Yeah. I know that there's probably a number of new listeners to this podcast because they're listening to Stewie and Stewie's little network. So what are some of the things that you've been most proud of during that time?
Through my work life?
Yeah,
okay.
I know you're proud of your family, and
very much so.
So talk about that first.
Well, family, we've got an awesome family. Very, very had 3 daughters, 9 grandkids, great bunch of people, and that they're important to me. They're everything to me. That's extremely family driven man. So, if I can do anything for them, I'll do it. My belief is not only your kids but your grandkids, they're only on loan for so long. So while you've got them on loan, do whatever you can, spoil as much as you can, because one day you're not going to be here, or they're not going to be here. So just they're on loan. So do what you can for them. So the other achievements as far as work goes was, I suppose, when I got to Bunnings. I've been in Kmart for 20 years. Bunnings came along, and I applied for a role in Bunnings as a complex manager, as they call those days, because we're extremely complex people. But I got the role, and I was the first person outside of Bunnings or McEwen's or that business to actually get a store manager's role. So I was really impressed with that. And I suppose then Masters came along, and I was snaffled up by Masters pretty much straight away because of the fact that I had the Bunnings background. So again, it was big box. So I was probably given a little bit, I wouldn't say latitude, but certainly there was a lot of questions asked of me through the Bunnings process, that how do we put that into Masters. And I think that working at Mountain Designs was, going in for a particular role.
Yeah.
And they're getting a phone call the next day to say, we want to offer you a national role. was awesome. It was really, really good. So, just unfortunately to see that business just fold after 42 years was not good.
Suppose it just, with all retail businesses nowadays, it's just such a challenge out there. Overheads and rents seem to be ever increasing. Sales seem to be flatlining, especially in stores. So you need to have an online presence. I know Bunnings resisted online for so long, and now all of a sudden they've got this top-notch offer. Really quickly evolved and changed during COVID. So for a business that was incredibly reluctant, you still go to a Bunnings store on a weekend, there's people everywhere. So they've still got the through traffic coming through, and they've picked up the additional with the online. So, it's always a shame to see great businesses go.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that I probably didn't mention, that I should have mentioned, I suppose, some of the wins is to see the amount of people that I suppose have worked with me that have gone to bigger and better, grown through those businesses into more senior roles. Some of them going past me into more senior roles, and that's I don't have an issue with that. I think it's good on them. But just to see them either growing within that business or have enough confidence from that business then to step into a more senior role in another business or diversify in another direction, that's probably one of the highlights as well, to see those people grow.
And I knew that your people would be one of your highlights, Stewie. And one of the things that when I was making the choice to move out of the operational retail leadership space and go into the development space, and this is quite a personal story that I haven't really shared, but I was there one day, and I was sitting there, and I was being notified that some of my fellow complex managers around the joint had just been promoted to the next level. And I sort of sat there and I thought, okay. And then I started to do a little bit of what I would call my stock take. This was my stock take. So what was important to me at that particular time was I'd had 3 ops managers who had become complex managers. I'd had something like, and this is like in a 2-year period, I had 7 coordinators who had stepped up into ops or were in that training position to be an operations manager. I'd had something like 55 future leaders coming through a pipeline to take up their first particular frontline leadership role. And I remember sitting there thinking, because I thought they're pretty good stats, and no one else in the company could match those stats at that particular time because I was very development focused. But when I looked at what the stats were that got you to the next level, people development wasn't part of it. And all of a sudden, that realization was, well, where am I going to feel significance? Where am I going to feel satisfaction? Because ultimately, I'm going to plateau in the position that I was. And I still remember you telling me once upon a time with a very wise old store manager, he said, why are you in such a hurry? Because you are going to be a store manager for a long time. And to me, that was the real realisation, because I was with Bunnings, I enjoyed the business, I enjoyed the people I worked with, there was fundamentally great culture. But I realised that if I really wanted to step out of my comfort zone and stretch and take on new positions, it necessarily wasn't going to happen in that particular organisation, because what I valued, which was working with people and developing them, was something that they valued, but it wasn't as much valued as hitting your KPIs and having a low shrink at stock take and getting your profit increases. And don't get me wrong, I still had those, but just not to the level of the ones that were getting promoted. So that was a real realisation for me, Stuart. I've never shared that story. So.
Oh, very good.
So is there anything that I haven't asked you as yet that you would like to just talk through with the listeners?
I don't think so. I just think, find something you love doing. Find a passion that you love doing. If you've enjoyed being around people, then there's lots of things. It's not just retail, but find something that you want to do. Don't just put your hand up and say, "Oh, there's a vacancy there. I'm going to grab that." Because sure as the legs happens, you're not going to be there for long.
Yeah.
And there's nothing worse, I don't think, these days than seeing someone's 57 jobs in 4 years because they haven't found what they wanted. Yeah. Yes, it's good. It's development. And you find out what you like and don't like. But look at what your passion is to start with. Yeah. And then follow that line.
Do what you love and love what you do.
If you're great with numbers and you don't like talking to people, become an accountant.
Yeah.
Put your round self in a round hole and enjoy it for the rest of your life.
Oh, good advice. Good advice. So Lifestyle Campers is where people can find you there now. Yep. So if someone wanted to connect with you, Stewie, what's the best way to do it?
Best way is to contact me via my, probably email's the best way. So it's Stuart, so Stuart, at lifestylecampertrailers.com.au. Happy to chat.
Excellent. Stewie, been a pleasure. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you for stepping up to the plate and being an interview for the Today's Leader podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it.
I have, and it's been good going down memory lane.
Absolutely. We'll be right back. Thanks, Stewie.
Join the group of people impacted by seriously simple stuff to get you unstuck. The first book by Tony Coach Curl. Available at Amazon, Tony's Simple Stuff provides the tool for people to master your life and aspirations. 20% of every book sold supports Carter's cause.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you. Stewie is a loved leader of hundreds of other managers that he's led and guided throughout the years, whether it's been through challenging times or whether it's been through optimistic and successful times. His little sayings are what's remembered by many as he's led them in the team, including the one he spoke about today, act as if. Now, this is a simple statement, but it's just so powerful. The ability to reflect on the attributes and skills that you need for your next role, your next step, your next move, and then take action on it to make it happen. So that whole concept of being able to reflect on what's required and then putting the steps in place that make it happen. So if you want to be seen as the leader in your next career stage, you have to influence others to see yourself in that particular role. Act as if. Be the role model, be the ideal candidate, provide the actions and behaviours that enable others to see you doing the next step. Be that person, the person that completes their current role successfully and looks ahead with enthusiasm and potential. If every leader took on some of that progress, some of those behaviours, the world would seriously be in a much better space. Now, we all deserve to have a leader like Stuart Browse leading us. But if you don't have one, become one. Thanks for tuning in today for our episode 208 of the Today's Leader podcast. Now, in today's disruptive world, good leadership skills will always stand you in great stead. If you're looking to build better leadership skills, consider our sponsors, Think and Grow Business and the Coach Curl Academy. Think and Grow Business is the home of the Think and Grow Business Mastermind, where we focus on personal, professional and business growth. Check it out at thinkandgrowbusiness.com, and while you're there, book in a free 30-minute discovery call so we can understand and help you get clarity around the next steps for your business or your career. The Coach Curl Academy has over 75 programs that will help you build a better you. Join for just $1 for the first month. The academy that equips you and enhances your mindset, your leadership and your business. And you can check that out at thecoachcurlacademy.com. Remember, you are standing stronger, braver and wiser. Don't ever forget the golden rule. Yes, you know what it is. Just don't be an arsehole. I'll see you.